Some minutes later, Tola began to feel a deep warmth inside of her as the man held her still. Though the man's grip around her was tight, his hands was soft and soothing, and Tola began to love it. Each minute that passed, Tola felt strongly in her the warmth she had been longing for a long time now. Her body yearned for it, and she found herself leaning closer to the man and pressing her body against his. The man, though deeply asleep, it was as though he could sense in his subconscious that Tola wanted so much to be hugged. So, he pulled her closer and wrapped his hands more tightly around her. Tola smiled. She was smiling, and Tola, a beautiful 27 years old young lady, was walking home after the close of work one night when she spotted a man from afar off suddenly fall into a drainage opening by the side along the road. Before he had fallen, Tola had noticed that the man was staggering as he walked, hence why it did not come off as a surprise to Tola when he fell. The road was not busy. The area was within a government residential area where the high and wealthy lived, so it was always mostly calm. And then, it was already quite late into the night at that time. It was around past 11 p.m, hence the more reason why the road seemed empty. There was a night cave club and coffee lounge down that street called The Exquisite. Rich men and wealthy big boys in town who loved the party life go there to relax and have fun. And that is where Tola works as a waitress. Tola, though not feeling sorry for the man, thought to help him. So, she hastened her steps so she could get to him and help him up. She recognized the man when she got close. She had seen him at the lounge earlier in the evening and had been worried that the man was taking too much alcohol. But of course, it was no business of hers, especially since it was an unfamiliar face. Tola could tell that the man was not a regular at the lounge because it was the first time she was seeing him there, unlike some other regular customers of the lounge, which Tola knows well. Even her colleagues had said the same thing that evening. As Tola struggled to help the man out of the drainage, a taxi suddenly stopped in front of them. The driver of the taxi came out and gave Tola a helping hand. The driver carried the man, who was obviously so drunk and unable to help himself, into the back seat of his car. "Where to, ma'am?" the taxi driver asked Tola after he made the man sit and was also adjusting the man's leg in his car at the same time. "What do you mean by where to? How am I supposed to know that?" Tola responded, wondering why the taxi driver was inquiring about the man's destination from her. Is it not your man friend? Aren't you together?" the taxi driver replied. The man was a middle-aged man, and looking at him, Tola could tell that he would be nothing below 50 years old. "Oga, are you okay at all? Can't you see that this man is old enough to be my father? How can you assume that he is my man friend?" Tola replied to the taxi driver with an expression of disgust. Now today Yansh dey back. It could be your sugar daddy now. No be girls like you, they follow old men up and down," the taxi driver said. "Please, mister, just hold it there. I am not one of those girls," Tola replied sharply. But in her heart, she knew that the taxi driver was not wrong to have assumed she was dating the older man, because it was no thing of secret and it was becoming common in the society to see younger girls date older men for money. As a matter of fact, she sees this every day at the club lounge she works at. "Hello, sir. Hello, can you hear me, sir? Can you understand me? Please, sir, give us an address so we can help you," Tola said, as she tapped the man gently, trying to get him to give her the information she has just inquired from him. But the man only kept mumbling gibberish, which Tola could not understand. "I guess I can't help you guys then," the taxi driver said, and started to take the man out of his car. "But we can't leave him in this condition now," Tola protested. "We? Did you say we? Please, oh. I had stopped because I thought you two were together and wanted to give you a helping hand because you are a lady that I thought a man was indisposed," the taxi driver replied. He carried the man out of his car and dropped him by the road again. Then, he entered into his taxi and was about to zoom off when Tola stopped him. "Stop! Please, Oya, get him into the car and take us to Alakowe Street by Checkers bus stop, mainland," Tola said. The taxi driver scoffed. "So why were you pretending that he's not your man in the first place?" he said, believing that Tola was pretending not to have known the man earlier. Well, Tola does not know the man and had never seen him not until that evening at her workplace. She had had a quick thought and feared that the man could be in danger if they left him in that condition, and that was why she had stopped the taxi driver from leaving and asked him to take them to the address. Please. Tola was able to get the man into her apartment with the help of the taxi driver. Her apartment was a single-room self-contained apartment with a single bed amongst Tola's clothes and other of her few belongings. So, Tola had no option but to lay the drunken and knocked out stranger on her bed. She had a bath, after which she laid at the other side of the bed. At around 1 a.m., Tola was fast asleep when she suddenly awoken as she felt a masculine hand touched her and drew her closer to himself. Tola opened her eyes as she realized that it was the strange man with her on the bed who was touching her. "I miss you, my Binkbe. I miss you so much. It has not been easy doing life without you. I am glad you have come back to me," Tola heard the man say. Tola realized that he was still deeply sleeping and was talking in his sleep because he said the words in mumbles. "I guess he must have lost someone special whose name is Binkbe, and it is probably the reason he had gotten himself drunk," Tola thought and felt pity for him. She tried to free herself from his grip, gently attempting to remove his hands. But his grip was strong and Tola was unable to. And Tola feared that if she forced it, she would wake him up. She turned her head to look at the man and realized he has fallen deeply asleep again. So, Tola decided to let it be. Some minutes later, Tola began to feel a deep warmth inside of her as the man held her still. Though the man's grip around her was tight, his hands was soft and soothing, and Tola began to love it. Each minute that passed, Tola felt strongly in her, the warmth she had been longing for a long time now. Her body yearned for it, and she found herself leaning closer to the man and pressing her body against his. The man, though deeply asleep, it was as though he could sense in his subconscious that Tola wanted so much to be hugged. So, he pulled her closer and wrapped his hands more tightly around her. Tola smiled. She was smiling and didn't know when she too fell asleep. Tola was startled awake in the morning by the sharp groan of a male voice. The man had woken up and realized that he was not in his bedroom and that he was lying beside a strange young lady. He tried to recall the events of the previous evening, but he could not remember much, except that he heard voices of people who were trying to help him. He remembered that in his head, he had tried to respond to their questions, but he was too intoxicated and ended up not uttering any reasonable words. Slowly, He stood up from the bed and tried to quickly make his way out of the room, as he was too embarrassed and did not want the young lady to wake up and still see him there. But as he tiptoed quietly, he hit his leg on a small stool in the room and let out a groan, which was what woke Tola up. Good morning. I am sorry I didn't mean to wake you up, he said, stuttering. Tola only stared at him and said nothing. Thank you for helping me last night, the man said, trying to fill the awkward silence when Tola did not respond. I guess I lost my phone in my drunken state last night. But if you don't mind, can you kindly write down your bank details so I can send you something to show my appreciation when I get home, the man said. Do not worry, I do not want your money, Tola replied. But the man insisted, so Tola came down from the bed to get her jotting notes. Holy Christ! I am almost late for my appointment, Tola screamed when she set her eyes on the clock whilst trying to find her jotting notes. Please, you should go now. Please go now. I need to be somewhere important and would lose good money if I don't make it there on time. You don't have to worry about getting my bank details. Thank you for appreciating my help, Tola said with a hurried tone as she pushed the man out of her apartment. I apologize for coming late, Dr. Brian. The traffic was, Tola said as she rushed into Dr. Brian's office, a skilled gynecologist in one of the best hospitals in town. But she could not complete her statement as she stood dead struck with shock after seeing the person in Dr. Brian's office. You're welcome, Tola. Meet Engineer Tade Wellington, the man whose baby you are carrying and who is paying you to be the surrogate mother of his child, Dr. Brian announced to Tola. Tola couldn't believe her eyes. Right before her was the man she had helped the previous night. The man whom she had shared the night with on the same bed and who had held her all through the night. The man Dr. Brian had just introduced to her as the owner of the baby in her womb. Tola and her older brother Deji lost their parents to a fatal car accident in their teens. And though not like they were from a wealthy family, but their parents' death caused more untold hardship for them. Deji was a caring big brother who took on menial jobs to cater for his sister and himself. He did his best to ensure that Tola completed her secondary school education, after which she also took up a job as a waitress in a roadside restaurant for a while, before eventually working at the exquisite club and lounge. Then suddenly, Deji fell ill one day. And after months of trying to make him get better by administering self-prescribed drugs from the pharmacy, he was diagnosed with a heart condition when he was finally taken to a better hospital. Tola was told to pay the sum of 1.8 million naira for a heart operation to save Deji. But alas, where could she get such huge amounts of money from when they struggle and hustle to feed daily? What she earns from her workplace at the lounge would not even be enough even if she saves it for the next 6 months. Now, Tayo was dating a young man named Femi. Femi was a rich kid whose father was very wealthy. Tayo had begged Femi to help her with the money for her brother's surgery. However, Femi would not help her. He kept telling her that he wanted to introduce her to his father first and would only help her with the money if his father approves of her. Then one day, while Tola was at work, she overheard 2 ladies' conversation. One of them spoke about how her older sister's doctor friend was looking for a surrogate mother for one of his clients who was willing to pay the sum of 15 million naira for it. He would pay 30% of the amount when the woman becomes pregnant and the 70% balance when the baby is born. The lady was telling the other lady with her that the doctor wanted her older sister to be the surrogate mother for his clients, but that her older sister had declined. She also said that she had wanted to take up the offer herself, but her older sister had prevented her from doing so. The lady spoke about how the money the doctor's client was offering could help her travel out of the country. Tola overheard it and also imagined of how such amounts would take care of her brother's surgery and help them live comfortably thereafter. Deciding to take the bull by the horn and desperate to save her brother's life, Tayo approached the lady. She told the lady that she was ready to do the job. She begged the lady to take her to the doctor, promising to give her 20% of the money. However, the lady insisted that it must be 50%. I brought the deal, so we will share the money 50-50, the lady said. After thinking for a while, Tayo agreed it was still a good offer. 50% of the money is 7.5 million naira, which is more than enough money for her brother's surgery. The lady took Tayo to meet Dr. Brian, who ran all necessary tests on her, after which the client's sperm was used to fertilize Tayo's eggs. When it was confirmed that Tayo was pregnant, Dr. Brian informed her that contrary to the initial agreement of not showing his face, his client now wants to meet the surrogate mother of his child. Tayo did not like this new arrangement when Dr. Brian informed her of it. She had also been okay with not knowing who the client was. All she wanted was to fulfill her own part of the deal and get the money to save her brother's life. But she reluctantly agreed, seeing that she was pregnant already. So, the date was fixed for her and the client to meet. And now, she was standing right before the client. He is the same man she had helped and spent the night with, cuddled underneath his arms. Engineer Tade Wellington is a wealthy man in his mid-50s. Many years ago, he had married his sweetheart Bimpe. However, Bimpe had some complications during childbirth for what was supposed to be their first child, which resulted in her womb being removed in order to save her life. As the years progressed, the desire to have children of their own grew. Bimpe came up with the idea for them to have children through surrogacy, but Tade did not like the idea and had blatantly refused. He insisted that they adopted instead. So, after a while, they adopted a son. Then, many years later, when their son became 21 years old, Bimpe suffered a heart condition and died before she could be given proper treatment. Tade and his late wife were good parents who had tried to inculcate good values and morals in their adopted son. But it was as though the son was possessed by some evil spirits which causes him to misbehave. He was stubborn, rude to people, and would always engage in fights. When he grew older, he also started womanizing and was partying all the time. Tade and Bimpe did everything they could think of to make him change for the better. They spoke to him softly, punished him, disciplined him, and prayed for him. But still, like I said earlier, it is as though there was a strong evil spirit in the young man which was controlling him and making him to misbehave. And when Bimpe died later, it became more difficult for Engineer Tade to raise the son on his own. Then, he began to wonder if he made a mistake by adopting a child instead of Bimpe's idea of surrogacy. Was it a punishment to him for not listening to his wife and ignoring her own desire? He thought. Then, he also started desiring having another child. a child he would nurture himself right from its birth, a child of his own blood, a child he hopes would bring him succor and comfort him in his old age, especially since his only adopted son was misbehaving. And that was when he decided to go with the idea of surrogacy, just as his late wife had wanted him to. On the night he got himself drunk, he had been so mad with his son, who constantly stole his money. After shouting at his son like he usually does, he felt his heart beat so fast and his head as though it was going to burst open and explode anytime soon. So, he decided to step out and cool off. He wanted to feel the fresh, cool wind of the evening, so he decided not to use his car but to walk instead. And then, just down the street, he decided to have some drinks at the exquisite lounge. Though he had seen the place many times, but he had never been inside. But that evening, he walked in, and instead of having a few bottles as he said to himself that he would, he got himself drunk, picked up by a young lady afterwards, and ended up spending the night at her apartment. And so, Engineer Tade Wellington was also shocked and embarrassed when he saw Tola again that morning in Dr. Bryan's office, after Dr. Bryan introduced her as the surrogate mother of his child. "Are you okay, Miss Tola? Is everything alright?" Dr. Bryan asked, jerking back Tola into reality from her shocked state. "Hello, Miss Tola. Thank you for agreeing to do this for me," Engineer Tade said, stretching his hands, extending a handshake to Tola, also having come out of his surprise state. Tola slowly shook the man's hand. Then, Dr. Bryan went ahead to brief them both about what they should expect during the course of the pregnancy and all Tola must do to ensure that the baby comes out healthy and without any complications. After which Engineer Tade wrote a check for 30% of the money as agreed in the deal. Tola was grateful for the money, happy that she could now afford the heart surgery for her brother Deji. "Now, all I have to do is to see to it that I deliver this baby in good condition and give it to its owner, so I would be free and have my life again," Tola said as she walked out of Dr. Bryan's office that morning. But would Tola have her life back? What would happen during the course of the remaining 8 months Tola would carry the pregnancy? Would Engineer Tade stay away from her after the warmth they both shared that night? How would Femi, Tola's boyfriend, react when he discovers that Tola is carrying another man's child? Find out in the second part of this video because I have to end this one here. Thank you for watching and see you in my next video. Bye.